Welcome to our deep dive. We're going deep into AL coding guidelines for Dynamics 365 Business Central.
Nice.
When you think about it, it's like building a really complex machine, right? You need clear blueprints.
Absolutely.
In AL coding, these guidelines are our blueprints, but they're really more than just rules.
Wow.
They're like a philosophy for crafting code that's not only functional, but, elegant, maintainable.
Yeah.
Today, we're using a YouTube video from Goms Tech Talks as our guide.
It's a fantastic resource. And what I really appreciate about it is it focuses on the why behind the guidelines.
Yeah.
Not just, what you're supposed to do, but why you do it.
It's not rote memorization. It's about understanding the principles.
Right.
Let's jump into naming conventions.
Okay.
You probably heard of, camel case and Pascal case.
Of course.
But what's even more crucial is choosing names that clearly communicate the purpose of your variables, functions, and, all those code elements.
I think of it like writing a well-structured sentence, Each word has a specific role. The order matters.
Yeah.
In AL, a well-chosen name instantly tells you what a piece of code does.
Right.
For example, like using verbs for functions.
Yeah.
Something like calculate a discount.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Immediately signals that this piece of code performs an action.
Okay.
Nouns work well for data variables, like customer name or order total.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
It's about clarity.
In the video, they recommend prefixes, too, which I found super helpful.
Oh, yeah, prefixes are great.
Like using cur for a currency value or FNC for a function. It's like those labels on your spice jars, so you don't accidentally grab cumin when you need coriander.
I love that analogy.
I mean, seriously, it happens, right?
At a time.
And prefixes can also help distinguish between different object types.
Oh, absolutely.
Like using ext for table extensions.
Makes it crystal clear you're dealing with an extension, not the base table. Imagine working on a project with dozens of tables and extensions. Those prefixes are lifesavers.
So we've got meaningful names, we've got helpful prefixes.
Yeah.
What's next in our journey toward beautiful, readable AL code?
Well, just like good grammar makes a sentence easier to read,
Right.
Proper indentation and white space can really enhance your code structure visually.
Sometimes I find myself rushing through and neglecting those spaces.
Oh, yeah.
And I always regret it later.
It's easy to dismiss them as trivial.
Yeah.
But those spaces and indents are crucial for readability.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine trying to read a paragraph with no punctuation or line breaks. Be a jumbled mess.
Yeah, for sure.
And AL is even stricter about syntax than written language.
Really?
Oh, yeah. So those spaces aren't just about aesthetics.
Okay.
They're often essential for the code to function correctly.
The example they gave in the video really hit home.
Right.
Even a tiny space between the colon and equal sign in an assignment statement, like a 10, can cause the code to break.
That's right. AL expects things to be in very specific places.
Wow.
So we have to be mindful of those spaces and indentation.
Okay.
Think of it like setting up dominoes. Everything has to be perfectly aligned for that chain reaction to work.
All right, so we've got clear naming, we've got consistent spacing.
Yeah.
What else can we do to make our AL code a joy to work with?
Well, imagine you're coming back to your code months later. Or even better, another developer needs to understand what you've written.
Yeah.
This is where clear and concise comments become really invaluable.
Yes, comments.
Yeah.
The bane of my existence, but I know deep down they're essential.
I think we've all been there.
For sure.
Think of comments as leaving a trail of breadcrumbs for your future self.
Okay.
Or your fellow developers.
Mm-hmm.
They answer the why behind your code. Why you chose a particular approach. What potential pitfalls to avoid how a piece of code fits into the overall architecture.
They even brought up anticipating future upgrades to Business Central.
Oh, which is so smart.
Yeah.
Business Central is constantly evolving.
Right.
And well-placed comments can save countless hours of deciphering code after an upgrade.
You're like a time traveler going back in time.
Right, it's like having a time machine.
Okay, I'm starting to see the light.
Yeah.
Comments aren't just annoying busy work. They're like time capsules of knowledge.
Exactly.
Speaking of knowledge, how about we take a pause here and continue our AL coding guideline adventure in the next part?
Sounds good.
There's still so much to cover.
Welcome back. I'm excited to keep going with these AL coding guidelines.
Me too. I'm starting to see how these seemingly small details can really make a huge difference in the long run.
Totally.
It's like the difference between a house that's just been thrown together and one that's been carefully crafted,
Yeah, like with attention to detail.
Yeah.
Speaking of crafting a well-structured application, let's talk about modularity.
Okay.
In AL, This often means organizing your code into distinct code units,
Okay.
each one focused on a specific area of business logic.
Okay, so instead of having one massive code unit that does everything, we break it down into smaller, more manageable pieces.
Exactly. Think of it like building with Legos.
Okay.
You have different bricks for different purposes. You combine them to create more complex structures.
Right.
Modularity makes your code base more organized.
Okay.
Easier to navigate, less intimidating to work with.
And if you need to make changes or fix a bug, you can isolate it to a specific code unit.
Exactly.
Instead of like having to wade through a sea of code.
That's the beauty of it. You can work on individual modules without worrying about breaking something else in the application.
Okay.
Plus, you can reuse those modules in other parts of your project or even in different projects altogether.
So we've got our code neatly organized into modular units.
Yeah.
What's next in our quest for AL coding excellence?
Let's talk about testing.
Ooh, testing.
I know it can sometimes feel like an extra chore.
Yeah.
But trust me, it's an investment that pays off in spades.
I've definitely been guilty of skipping tests in the past.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when deadlines are looming.
Happens to the best of us.
But then I inevitably run into those pesky bugs.
Right.
That could have been easily caught if I had just done a little bit of testing up front.
We've all been there. Testing is like having a safety net
Okay.
that catches errors before they can cause serious problems in your application.
Yeah.
And in AL, there are some powerful tools and techniques we can use to make testing more efficient and effective.
The Goms Tech Talks video touched on testing,
Yeah.
but it didn't go into a lot of detail.
Sure.
What are some types of testing we should be thinking about as AL developers?
So two key types are unit testing and integration testing.
Okay.
Unit testing focuses on testing individual pieces of code in isolation.
Okay.
For instance, if you have a function that calculates sales tax,
Yeah.
you'd write a unit test to make sure it's producing the correct results based on various inputs.
So it's like making sure each ingredient in a recipe is measured correctly before you mix everything together.
Yeah.
Exactly. Integration testing, on the other hand, checks how different parts of your code work together as a system.
Okay.
It's like making sure all the components of a machine are properly connected and functioning in harmony.
If we're building a sales order processing system,
Yeah.
an integration test might check that all the steps from creating an order to generating an invoice are working together seamlessly.
Precisely. And while there are tools within Visual Studio Code that can help us with testing, there's also a lot we can do within AL itself to make our code more testable.
Oh, okay.
For example, using dependency injection allows us to easily swap out components for testing purposes.
So testing isn't just about finding bugs.
Right.
It's about building confidence in our code
Absolutely.
and ensuring it behaves as expected.
Speaking of ensuring our code behaves as expected, what happens when things don't go according to plan?
Oh.
That's where error handling comes in.
Error handling, that's one of those things I know I should do,
Yeah.
but I often find myself rushing past it to get to the fun stuff.
It's easy to fall into that trap. But remember, even the most meticulously crafted code can encounter unexpected situations.
Right.
Users might enter invalid data, external services might be unavailable.
True.
Any number of things could go wrong.
Yeah.
Error handling is about gracefully handling those situations and preventing your application from crashing and burning.
I like that analogy.
Right.
It's like building shock absorbers into our application so it can handle those bumps in the road without falling apart.
In AL, we can use mechanisms like try-catch blocks to gracefully catch and handle potential errors.
Okay.
Instead of letting the application crash,
Yeah.
we can display helpful messages to the user log the error for later analysis or even attempt to recover from the error if possible.
So if a user tries to enter an invalid date, we can catch that error and display a message saying, please enter a valid date in the format, MMDDYYY, instead of just letting the application crash with a cryptic error message.
Good error handling is all about providing a smooth user experience, even when things go wrong.
I'm realizing that error handling is not just about preventing crashes.
Right.
It's about anticipating potential problems.
Yeah.
And providing a safety net for both the application and the user.
It's a crucial part of building robust and user-friendly AL applications.
Okay.
And how about we take a quick breather and come back to tackle the remaining guidelines in Part 3.
Sounds good.
We still have performance compatibility and compliance to explore.
Okay, we're back, ready to wrap up our AL coding guideline deep dive.
Let's do it.
We've covered a lot, from naming conventions to error handling.
Yeah, a lot of ground.
Now let's zoom in on a few more things
All right.
that can really make or break our AL applications.
Right.
Performance, compatibility, and compliance.
These are essential considerations for any developer.
Yeah.
We want our applications to run smoothly, work seamlessly across different versions of Business Central,
Right.
and adhere to industry standards and regulations.
What good is a beautifully structured, error-free application if it takes forever to load or breaks every time there's a Business Central update?
Exactly. So let's start with performance.
Okay.
Remember those database interactions we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
Minimizing the number of trips to the database can really make a difference.
It's like planning a grocery shopping trip. It's much more efficient to go once with a well-organized list than to make multiple trips for each item.
Precisely. And think about those moments when you're working with large data sets in AL.
Okay.
Leveraging keys and filters could be a game changer.
Yeah, like trying to find a specific product in a massive warehouse.
Exactly.
Using a barcode scanner to instantly locate the item is much faster than manually searching through every aisle.
Right. Are there any other performance tricks we should be thinking about?
Yeah, what else is there?
Avoiding unnecessary computations can also make a big difference.
Okay.
If you have a calculation that needs to be performed multiple times, store the result in a variable and reuse it instead of recalculating it each time.
That makes sense. It's like pre-chopping vegetables for a recipe.
Exactly.
Instead of chopping them every time you need them.
Right. Saves you time and effort.
I'm guessing there are ways to make our code more memory efficient as well?
You bet being mindful of the data types you're using can have a significant impact on memory consumption.
Okay.
If you only need to store whole numbers, use an integer instead of a decimal, which takes up more memory.
So it's like choosing the right size container
Exactly.
for storing leftovers.
Right. You don't want to use a giant Tupperware container for a small portion of food.
So performance is all about making our AL applications run like well-oiled machines.
Absolutely.
What about compatibility?
How can we ensure our code continues to work smoothly as Business Central evolves?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Staying informed about upcoming changes and deprecations in AL is crucial.
Okay.
Microsoft provides excellent resources outlining these changes, giving us a heads up so we can adapt our code proactively.
And sticking to standard AL features and best practices, rather than creating custom workarounds that can help future-proof our code, right?
Absolutely. Think of it like using standard electrical outlets and wiring in your house.
Oh.
Sticking to the standard ensures compatibility with various appliances and devices.
Makes sense.
Similarly, using standard AL syntax and libraries increases the likelihood that your code will remain compatible with future versions of Business Central.
Speaking of standards, let's talk about compliance in the world of business applications. We often deal with sensitive data and industry-specific regulations.
That's right. Compliance is paramount.
Yeah.
Microsoft provides comprehensive guidance and resources on compliance considerations for Business Central applications.
Okay.
For example, if you're developing an application for the healthcare industry, you need to be aware of HIPAA regulations for patient privacy.
Right.
Or if you're working with financial data, you need to adhere to PCI DSS standards for payment card security.
So as AL developers, we need to wear multiple hats.
Yeah.
Not just coders, but also performance optimizers, compatibility gurus, and compliance experts.
It's a lot to juggle.
It is.
But remember, these guidelines are here to help us. They're a roadmap to building high-quality, robust, and compliant AL applications that meet the needs of our users and businesses.
This deep dive has been really insightful.
It has.
We went from understanding the why behind these AL coding guidelines to exploring practical examples.
Yeah.
We even touched on more advanced concepts.
It's been a pleasure exploring these topics with you.
Likewise.
And remember, this is just the beginning. The world of AL development is constantly evolving.
Yeah, for sure.
So stay curious, keep learning, and don't be afraid to experiment.
Great advice.
By embracing these best practices, we not only elevate the quality of our work, but also contribute to a more collaborative and innovative development environment.
Beautifully said. Thanks for joining us on this journey, and happy coding, everyone.